I'm really thrilled to have Martin Rapley back here, and he is going to be talking to us today about, basically how to successfully work with builders. So those of us obviously here because we're in property, and inherently at one stage or another, we need to work with builders, don't we? And we need to get a really good refurb project, whether it's a small project, a big project. There are specific things that we can do to make that run more smoothly and enable us to sleep at night. I know that a lot of people, when they're coming into what I call professional property investing, a lot of them say things like, and I'm sure you've heard this loads, Martin, I've had a few buy-to-lets. I tried to do some flips, but it was such a nightmare. I tried, all builders are all terrible. That's what I hear a lot. Trades are all terrible. And you're kind of there going, oh, that's not really true. But I understand you've had a poor experience. But like all these things, can you hear the dogs barking in the background?
Yes.
Like all these things, oh, bloody dogs, hold on a sec. I think I only muted on the wrong thing then. I think you heard me shouting, shut up, didn't you?
I heard you. Depends where the recording went.
Anyway, they'll shut up in a minute. So what is really key, and like all things in life, all things in business, we have to take responsibility for what is happening to us. And I truly, truly believe that we can all control that. Hold on 2 seconds. Definitely going to be one of those days, Martin, isn't it?
Sounds like it, doesn't it? Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, they're all in the garden now.
It proves this life, and we're talking in the real world.
Exactly. So I believe that everything that happens to us, we have control of that. We don't always know how to control it, but absolutely it is. It's something that we need to learn, we need to find out. And so hence, I know we've spoken before, Martin, but we were having a chat the other day, and we really felt that this would be a fantastic follow-on to help us move forward with this. So please, Martin, for anyone who doesn't know you, can you just do a quick introduction, and then we can sort of jump into into some teaching of how we can help.
Yeah, sure. So my background is construction. I left school, worked for a building contractor, initially as a quantity surveyor, got into project management, came into property investing circles in 2012 originally, when I was still running a building business, had my own construction business then, but realised I could provide a lot more support to property investors being on the other side as a consultant. So I've worked as a project manager, quantity surveyor for for developers and property investors since 2013, and I've been training property investors on the principles that I've seen and learned for myself since 2016. So to some extent, I'm almost poacher turned gamekeeper here, because I know what made a good project for me as a builder and what made a bad project for me as a builder. And sadly, some of that, or a large amount of that, was actually related to the quality of the clients that we work for. So I'm here really to ensure that you are not one of those clients by design or by accident that builders don't want to work for, and again, potentially mess around as a result.
Well, I love that. And that completely turns it on its head as well, doesn't it? So I presumably that would be the situation as well. I mean, the real obvious Felicia Beacon is when you've asked for a quote for a job that's, $5,000, and they come back with a quote for 20. I did actually have that quite recently. I'd done my numbers. I felt it was around the 20, maybe 25 mark. And he came back with 50. And so you kind of think, well, either that is not the project for them, or as you say, maybe they didn't want to work with me, or, you know, whatever. There's going to be a reason, and that could be a little bit of a highlight, isn't it? So well, let's you know, so what would you advise, you know, when looking for a builder? Where do we start?
So I think the most important thing about looking for a builder is you are looking for a builder, but that one builder that's going to do your project is going to come from a big list. And this is one of the mistakes I see a lot of property investors making, is that they're not really talking to enough builders in the first place. And they've very much got to a point where, well, we're talking to two builders, one of them's gone on holiday, so I'm forced to use the other one. And what I would say is the mindset has got to be that we've got to start with a much bigger list. And start with a mindset, and this is absolutely true, that most builders are good builders. Potentially that most builders are good builders. Like there's some crooks in the property investing circles, and you might know them and you might have mixed up with them, that give us all a bad name. Sadly, there's a few crooks in construction. But generally, most construction businesses are good businesses. And the thing of it is about finding the right business for you. And there's some really simple criteria you can follow. You know, some very simple things like, does the person you're speaking to actually do the kind of work that you want them to carry out? If you're refurbishing a property and they predominantly do new build houses, they're potentially not the right builder. They're not a bad builder, they're just not the right builder for you for this project. And that gets flipped on its head. If they predominantly do refurbishments, they probably can't build new build houses. And then where do they work? Do they generally work in the area where you're asking them to work? Or are you trying to persuade them to come into a different area because you knew them from something previously, you know, in an area where they've got better contacts and it's easier for them to get to? And then what is the size of the project they generally carry out? You know, do they generally carry out projects that are up to 20, 30, 40, 50,000 pounds? And is that the size of your project? Or are they an enormous business that are based in the high street with a big glossy office and lots of vans and cars that are perhaps not bad builder, but perhaps the wrong builder for you? So I'm not really wherever looking for good builders and bad builders. I'm looking for the right builder for my project, the right fit for my project. And to find that, I'm going to have to eliminate some that are not the right fit this time around, and I've got to be critical. And then really, once we've got this big list, we can then start being even more critical about the selection of builders. For instance, if you meet a builder and you think, oh my word, I could punch this fella on the nose, don't punch him on the nose, but don't work with him either. Don't try and force a relationship with something that isn't going to work. If the person never replies to your emails, doesn't answer the phone, forgets to meet you on site the day you're going there, then don't work with them. But you can only start to be that critical if you've got this big list in the first place. So start with a really big list, whittle it down, be critical about the ones that you're approaching for a price. And then the likelihood is that you are choosing the best from a very good bunch in the first place. And you're not being forced to take the only one who actually priced and gave me anything to work. Because that's not where you want to be.
No, absolutely. And then as far as kind of, finding them, I'm just kind of thinking like I'm a member of the BNI. So I feel really fortunate. And that was one of, in fact, years ago now, but that was one of the reasons why I joined the BNI, because I literally thought I have no idea what makes a good builder, a bad builder, all of the things that you've just mentioned. So I thought, well, at least going through something like that, it would give me an opportunity to at least be able to speak to other people that had used them, all of those kind of things. But I suppose also you have like things like next door now, don't you? I suppose you have I looked out for a new painter decorator in our group the other day, and I actually put out a post in my local area on Facebook saying, can anyone recommend a great painter and decorator? And it was fantastic, loads of people going back. So I presume, is that kind of the way that you'd find them? And what do you believe is kind of a good number to aim for as far as the, you know, number of builders you want on your list?
Yeah, okay. So BNI, let's start with BNI because you mentioned BNI. I've never been a member of BNI, but if there is a downside to looking to builders on BNI is you're in one chapter and they only have one builder. So I think you've got to get involved with other chapters.
Yeah, so you can have, so what I tend to do is I just tend to ask a number of chapters, their builder, to come and do a quote. And that's
absolutely. So so it is about knowing more than one. And of course, there's other networking events out there as well. I used to do a lot of networking on For Networking. I don't know how prolific they are any longer. Perhaps a little negative to networking is you go to the average property investors network, it's quite rare to find builders of those. So don't set out thinking, I'm going to come away from a property networking event with a long list. You're not. You might meet one, maybe two. So I don't tend to rely on networking so much for finding builders. I think other places you definitely can. Recommendations, and that's effectively what you've done by putting a post out on Facebook. Who knows a painter and decorator? And in reality, you'll get lots of recommendations. You'll get recommendations from people that have worked with the painter and decorator and had a brilliant result. But you'll also have recommendations from the painter's mum and their friends and anyone else who thinks they might want some work and has actually got no knowledge of their quality. So wherever you get these names from, they become part of your long list and they become part of the process to do some due diligence on and to whittle it down. And the more due diligence you do, the better contractors you're going to get. But bear in mind also that with the smaller the project, the less due diligence you need to take up, really, to some extent. So I tend to continually have a list of potential contractors. For instance, another really good way of finding a contractor is if I've got a new project starting and I'm walking around the streets and I see a sign-written van or I see a sign on a gate of a builder that's working there, I'll take the details. Just take a photo of the van or whatever with a phone number and email on it, and they'll go on my list. Now, I might then go and do some research, and there might be something in that research that means it's not right. It means that, actually, they specialise in bathroom fittings. Well, that's not what I need. They're good for bathroom fittings. They're not what I need here. Or that they specialise in extensions or whatever. So you've got a continually evolving list. I would say don't start from today. So, right, I've got a building project starting in a few weeks' time. I need to get a long list. Be continually looking at growing your list, adding builders on, taking them off, doing some research, listening out. When you go to a networking event and someone says, I had a bit of a nightmare with a builder, well, find out who they were. Maybe there's someone to take off your list. So keep it as something that's continually evolving. And if you're buying a property now, if you're going through the conveyance stage now of a property you're buying, start building that list now and start being critical and start doing some research. Typical research you can do is go onto social media, go onto Facebook, put the builder's name in and see what comes out. You might find a really encouraging little Facebook page. You might find their website address. You might find out more about the owner of the business. Maybe you've got some connection, and you can follow things through there. So I think the thing with a list is it's an evolving thing. It wants to be as big as you can make it, and it wants to be, but it wants to be something that you are actively in charge of reducing in size as well as growing in size as much as you can. So, networking is good. Walking around the streets is good. Asking for recommendations is good. But don't overlook just putting in Google builder in your town. You'll have loads of options come up. And again, do the research. The ones that are at the top of the list have probably got expensive offices and are paying for search engine optimization to be at the top, maybe sponsored ads and things. But as you come down that list, you'll see smaller builders, you'll see builders always take a photo of them with their van. They're always proud of their van. But do the research. Just because there's a testimonial that says Bob the builder did a great job, look at the date. Is it likely to be credible? Was it written by their mum? You know, do the research. Don't trust anything unless you can find it out for yourself.
Amazing. Yeah, really, really great. And I love that, talking about actively growing, but actively cutting back. Hadn't really kind of thought of that. And I think, you know, certainly I am. You kind of think about, you know, the group of people that you know, and you want to kind of stick with them. And you probably, like you say, try and make them potentially, you know, a round peg, maybe a square hole for your particular development at that point. So it's really key to keep, you know, updating and seeing, you know, just because they were good for the project you just did, if this is a new and different project, then maybe you should be looking at something else. So yeah, really key. So guys, if this seems really useful to you and you know anyone else who this might be useful to, please do ping 6 people. That would be amazing, who you know would be interested in listening to this and hearing from Martin's fantastic feedback. Thank you guys, that would be great. Okay, so you know, so once you've found these builders, I really loved that you talked about not whether, you know, you think the builder is any good, but you actually talked about how might you want to ensure that the builder actually wants to work with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, and to some extent, builders, yeah, you're doing due diligence on the builders, they are going to do due diligence on you, because they don't want to work with bad clients. And when I was a builder, our common reason that we gave for not working with clients was, sorry, we're too busy. Now, so if anyone has ever continually been told by builders that they're too busy, then maybe let's just flip this on its head and see if I can help you become a better client. And the ways to become a better client, the first thing is having some clear knowledge as to actually what you're trying to achieve with your property. Remember, we've already said that these builders are not at property investing events. So they don't necessarily understand, for instance, what a serviced accommodation unit needs to be. They don't know what is expected in a serviced accommodation unit. So you shouldn't be asking them these questions. You shouldn't be saying to them, well, what should I do in the kitchen to make this usable for a family holiday let or something like that, because that's not their business. You should be saying to them, to use the property in this use, I need to introduce this, and this, and here's the layout of it. This is why I need remote access central heating, because this is what I know my clients are going to need. And the same with HMOs. Don't say to a builder, oh, can you make sure it complies with the HMO regulations? But they possibly don't even know what an HMO is. But if you tell them it needs a fire alarm, it needs fire doors, it needs this, and this, they can happily deliver that. And the way we tell them this information is either through a series of drawings, which we might have got in conjunction with an architect, or it will be some kind of specification. And remember that it's you that's going to own this building. It's you that's going to benefit from its use, serviced accommodation use, renting it out, or indeed possibly even selling it. It's you that gets the benefit. Therefore, it's you that needs to steer the builder in the right direction. So, for instance, if you ring a builder up and say, oh, can you meet me at a property next week and we can have a bit of a walk round, I'll tell you what I need, the builder's going to be thinking, well, this is someone who doesn't really seem to know what they want. Why can't they write it down? Why can't they send me the drawings they need? And when they've sent me that, I'll happily go and meet them there next week, because I know I'm going to be in competition, and I want to be in competition that have got the same paperwork as me, because I know I'm now looking at the same project and I'm understanding the project in the same way as the other builders that are going to come along and look at it the same stuff. Otherwise, who knows what we're all going to understand. So having some good, clear knowledge as to what you want to achieve, you've got that written down in a format that you want to, that's clear and easy to understand. It doesn't have to be in builder's technical speak. It just needs to be clear and show that you are ahead of the game and that you've thought about the products that you want and you've thought about what you're trying to deliver. Then suddenly you are right at the top of the list, because builders don't earn any money from pricing projects. They want to win work, but in turn, they don't want to waste money pricing or getting involved with projects that look as though they're disorganised. Because if it's disorganised at the start, it's going to be disorganised all the way through. They're going to phone you up and say, right, I've put in what you've told me to put in. And you're going to say, oh, I didn't realise I'd told you. That's not what I wanted. I've changed my mind. And changing of your mind leads to uncertainty. The builder then says, well, I've got to charge you for this because I've already tiled the walls in the white tiles. I didn't realise you wanted the pink ones. So now I've got to charge you for taking the tiles off, and I've got to go and buy the tiles. And I've got to get a man in a van to go and buy them quickly this afternoon. So there's £25. And you say, what, £400 extra for these tiles? And we've now got dispute. We don't want dispute, because that's where the relationship breaks down. And the builder that thinks, well, there's someone here who doesn't seem to know what they want. How can I be sure that the kitchen's going to be delivered at the right time, and that my carpenter isn't standing around waiting for the delivery? So this is all about demonstrating that you know what you've got to do. And sometimes that is a case of slowing down a little bit so that you are properly organised to speed up later on, rather than, well, I've got the keys, let's meet a builder there tomorrow morning and let's see what we can do. That's not the attitude for them.
Yeah, I love that. And in fact, it was interesting. I was speaking to a lady the other day, coaching her, and she'd said that she'd, read your book, been on one of your courses, and she felt really proud. She'd given a schedule of works to the builder, and he literally looked really shocked, and he was like, wow, I wish everyone did this. And she was like, yeah. So I was, feeling really proud about it. And that's exactly right, isn't it? So if you can see that somebody is going to not, because inherently, who wants to work with people that are going to be difficult, going to be a pain potentially? And you might not mean to be a pain, but like we spoke about, we have control in what our destiny is and what we do. We sometimes don't know how to get there, but by putting all these things in place, it can really work. And also I was thinking about that. If the main thing that we hear from builders is that I'm too busy, if you're really specific of your project, and let's say they can look at that and go, it's this, this, and this, they're really clear. Okay, well, actually, I could actually fit that in between this project and that project, because I know so specifically, and you've made it so clear. Whereas somebody else who goes, as you said, come and have a look round. What do you think? Do you think I should do that? Do you think I should do that? They're going to be thinking, oh no, I'm never going to fit that in, so to speak. So that, I suppose that's quite an interesting one, like you say. So okay, so let's say we've gone down this route. It all comes down to, as we've spoken about, getting quotes, doesn't it? And, we've already spoken about getting crazy high quotes. I always look at builders and those kind of tradespeople and really feel for them, that they have to do so many quotes, and, there's so many jobs that they're not going to get. So, yeah, how would you go ahead and get them to price for projects?
So I think at the moment, builders are just starting to get a little bit more hungry for work. So that definitely does make it a little bit easier. And the reason for that primarily is that members of the public are not quite spending as much money on their own houses at the moment, which means that there's builders that are looking for work with us as property investors. So that's a good thing to know. But that's no excuse for cutting corners. So I would still be looking for 6 builders to price my project. So I've got my long list. I've been critical. I've cut that down, and I found 6 builders that I want to work. Because the market we're in, the smaller builder market, one of them is going to go on holiday. He's going to forget he's booked a holiday, and it doesn't work. Another one's going to have a family disaster. and and not be able to get you a quote. So you might get 4 prices. And that really that's what you want to be looking at. You want to have 4 prices from 4 businesses that you have done some reasonable due diligence on up front, that you are reasonably happy can deliver. But you still need to continue being critical, as I said earlier on. If they don't turn up for a pre-arranged appointment, that is a negative, because what else can't they arrange? It's a bit different if they ring you and say they got stuck in traffic. These things happen. If you've sent them all of the information of the project, and then they turn up and they say, "Oh, I need to come back again next week with my electrician." It's like, well, I've told you. You knew if you'd read it, you'd have known you needed the electrician. That shouldn't be a surprise. So again, they're not necessarily reasons to say no, but they're reasons just to have a bit of a negative against them. And what you'll find genuinely is that 1 or 2 builders shine all of the way along. They are on the case. They send you a text message to confirm that they're on their way. They send you an email confirming that they're going to price it by next Wednesday or whatever you've agreed with them. And you just start to see these better builders rising above the others. And you're not going to see, the only way you'll really start to see the best builders is by seeing the ones that aren't so good. And sadly, and in fact, I'm working with a client at the moment, a project up in North London, where he was quite keen to work with his previous builder. He'd worked with a builder before, but he'd asked us to tender this project, an HMO conversion was, a £200,000 project, so a sizable project, and he'd asked us to tender it, and we tendered it to others, and never did his existing builders shine. All the way through the tender process, he just didn't shine. And we've got to a point where our client has now accepted that there were far better builders than his previous builder, but because he didn't know anything better, he thought he couldn't get any better. Now we've demonstrated to him that there are better builders out there that are better organised and will give better feedback. He's actually quite happy accepting that there are better builders out there, and you'll only learn this, is what I'm saying, by doing this. And sadly, you will have not some appalling builders. Hopefully, you never have appalling builders, but you will sadly have builders that are not as good as they might be. And that still happens for me. I still get builders that do work for me that don't turn out as good as we were hoping they would be. And then it just becomes a process of managing them through. But you've got less likelihood of finding those if you start with a big list and you are still talking to 4 people. When if you've got prices from 4 builders, you've still got some choice in front of you. You haven't got to that point where, I've only got 1 price, so I've got to start him. And he's going to be rubbish, because that's not where you want to be.
Great. So how do we choose then? What is it, kind of everything as you've said above kind of thing, and then sort of really bringing it down? It's, it sounds like it's, likely not to be necessarily the lowest or the highest. Is it always the middle? It sounds like we'll be putting into, who's shining as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've touched on the most important thing here. There is no law that says we have to appoint the cheapest builder. So you need to be appointing the builder that's right for you. And sometimes the cheapest builder eliminates themselves because they've not ticked some of the other previous boxes. Sometimes the cheapest builder eliminates themselves by being just way too cheap. I've seen builders. Well, I've seen prices where we've got 3 prices very close together, which would indicate that's the right kind of figure, and then another one considerably lower. Mm. And at that stage, I probably won't even have a conversation with the one who's considerably lower, unless there's something fundamental, like I can see that there's a whole chunk of the price they've missed out, or they've not added something up properly. I'll often just completely eliminate them. When we were contractors, if we priced the project and we heard we'd come second, we used to say, well, we got the price right then, because the person who's won it has probably made a bigger mistake than we have. And sadly, this is what happens in building. frequently the builder who wins the project is the builder who's made the biggest mistake, the builder that's misunderstood the project the most. And so you don't want to be the client on the other end of that who's now been forced to work with a builder who made a big mistake, because that mistake will come back and bite you somewhere. It will. If it's a minor thing, it's not a problem. But if there's a big mistake, which could easily be the case, 3 prices close together and one a lot lower, if it's a big mistake, that builder's going to have to recover that cost somewhere. Well, how do they recover the cost? Well, they either cut some corners to get there, poor quality work, poor quality materials, poor quality tradesmen, but that's not going to do you any favours in the longer term. Or they come back to you cap in hand and say, I've just realised I missed out all of the central heating system, and that's £15,000. And it's like kind of take it or leave it, at which point they may not have been the most competitive. That might leapfrog them above some of the others. So if a price is very low, you definitely want to be digging around, but you might want to just eliminate it straight off and be talking to the builders that can deliver. And remember, the other thing to really consider alongside price is duration of the work, because some builders are going to be more expensive but are actually going to complete the work in a less time. Because they've got a bigger workforce, they can have 5, 6 people on site at any one time. Whereas if you're talking to a builder that's just, a 2-man band, they're going to take a lot longer. And remember that there is cost all of the time. You haven't got your guests in the property, or all the time you haven't got your tenants in the property. That may actually mean that a builder who is more expensive as a build cost is actually a more competitive offer, when you take it holistically, because they're going to finish 5 weeks earlier. Therefore, you've got your guests staying 5 weeks earlier, and therefore you've got money coming in the other way. And let's say that's let's say that's £1,000 a week. Well, that means his price can be £5,000 more expensive, and he's still the better builder. So there's a bit more to think about, but it goes back to that very first communication, those builders that have stood out all the way along, and then looking at the whole big picture. Some builders might say to you, well, this is my price, but I can't actually start now for 6 weeks. Well, consider that. It's nice and cheap, but I've got to wait 6 weeks, which means it's 6 weeks later before he finishes, as opposed to someone who might be a bit more expensive. And I would say, this is a really hard thing to guess, but I would say in my whole career, I would be thinking somewhere towards 35-40% of the time we've not appointed the cheapest contractor. Wow. For one reason or another. The one that looks like they're the cheapest on paper is not the best contractor all in. And sometimes, consider what's £1,000 difference in price to get a better builder. And as I say, there's no law that says you have to have that one that's £1,000 cheaper. If you don't think they're the right builder, just go back and say, really sorry, you weren't successful. If they say, where were we on price? You can say you were very close. Just lie and tell them they were second if you don't want to know they were the cheapest and you didn't want to engage with them.
Fantastic. Absolutely. So that's really interesting, isn't it? And we don't really hear about that at all. So, generally when you're talking about your refurb or your build or whatever it is, you just talk about the price. But bringing in the time scale as well is such an obvious one, isn't it? But I would imagine potentially very much overlooked. As you said, is there going to be a delay? If you suddenly have these price differentials that we've been talking about, but one of them, as you say, finishes so much quicker, that really must be put into the equation and have that comparison. So that's really key. It's sort of something that you kind of think about, but talking through it with you, it's just something that you would become more concrete with, isn't it? Because I know we found that we had a main contractor kind of pull out in our hotel last year, and there's lots of tradespeople out there where there was lots of people that we could use, but a lot of them clearly couldn't start tomorrow. And a lot of them were saying, well, we could squeeze you in, on a Thursday once a week, maybe. So it's kind of, you've really got to consider that as well, haven't you? So, yeah.
And as part of building your long list, the reason not to use a builder could be that they're not available. Again, they're not a bad builder. They're just the wrong builder at that particular time. You've got your long list. You ring a builder up and say, right, I've got my project. It's going to start in 6 weeks' time. I want to get the tender pack out to you and price it. Some builders will say, look, really sorry, can't start anything now. And genuinely, they are too busy. Or they'll say, actually, I'm not going to be able to price it for you because I'm going on holiday next week. Don't even put them on the tender list. Just store them away for another day. But the key thing is be critical before you even get started. Don't leave it until you've only got a few builders in front of you and start getting critical then, because you'll find you've got no one left.
Amazing. And so then, you've chosen your kind of builder, and then what do you advise as far as kind of managing them from that point forward? I mean, obviously, through your guidance, we're going to be really clear. We've given them a schedule of works. We've done our due diligence. We know they're not going on holiday. Hopefully they won't have some kind of disaster. They've got their team ready, and it's ready to go. But obviously, then that opens a whole new can of worms, doesn't it? So, from there, how do you see that kind of management from once you've appointed them?
Well, there's another little stage just before we appoint a builder. And I think this is a real golden nugget here. And this is a stage that loads of people miss out. If you're running a business, whether you're in property or out of property, if you're running a business and you were about to engage with a new supplier, for whatever that might be, the likelihood is if that was more than, measured in tens of thousands of pounds, you would have a meeting. And this is the thing that too many property investors miss out. They get on the phone and they say to the builder, right, I'm good to go. Can you start on Monday? And my view is you need to have a business-to-business meeting. You need to have a meeting to ensure that both businesses are in the same place, that what you believe the builder is delivering is what he believes he wants you to deliver, and that you are in agreement with the terms of the agreement that are going to be between you. And I use those meetings to talk through the project. I ask builders, well, talk me through what order are you going to do things? If I go down there on the first week, on the Friday, what will I have seen? Oh, well, we'll have ripped everything out by then. You'll see a skip on the driveway. It's just, and you can listen to what they say, and they might say something that just rings an alarm bell. Oh, you said you were going to repair that. I thought you were going to replace that. Can we have a chat about that? Because now what we're doing is we're getting all these uncertainties out up front. Bearing in mind at this stage, the builder hasn't been appointed. So he knows he's close. And so if there's something that you're not quite happy with, he might say, oh, well, I can do that for you. Well, I'll agree that that's included in the price. He might say he has to go and review his price, but he's more likely to review his price to a small extent if he's still hungry for the work than thinking that he's already got it. Because if you move the parameters after you've awarded the project, it's pretty much, here's my price, take it or leave it. Whereas if you can find these little gaps beforehand, then there's much more opportunity to solve those issues before the builder starts. My advice with these meetings is don't have the meeting at the property where the work's going to go on. Because you can't have a proper business-to-business meeting walking around in a cold, empty house. As a minimum, you need to be in a coffee shop around the corner or a hotel. If you've got an office, maybe the office works. Sometimes the builder will take you to their office if they've got an office. But my view is, find a coffee shop nearby, meet up and have a meeting over a table where you can get the schedule out, you can get drawings out of it, and talk through it. And as part of that meeting, agree the terms. When are the works starting? When are they going to finish? Be 100% clear what the contract sum is. How much are you paying the builder for these works? does that figure include the VAT or not? What's the mechanism for paying builders? Are you paying a little deposit up front? Are you going to pay every week? Are you paying every 2 weeks? Get all of that out. Be clear who the builder is invoicing. Is he invoicing you or is he invoicing your property company? Being clear who you're working with. Is it Bob the Builder? Is it Bob the Builder and Sons? Is it Bob the Builder and Sons Limited? Be totally clear about all of this stuff. And I would schedule all of that up and just have that maybe as an email, just to agree in everything else as a loose end, so that it's absolutely clear 6 weeks down the line when a question gets raised, it's actually, oh, we discussed that at a meeting, don't you remember? Here's the bit where we discussed it. You know, when the builder phones you on Friday and says, I want some money, you can say, don't you remember? We talked about, we were going to come down every 2 weeks. But what you'll find is these questions don't even come up because you've got them out on the table beforehand. And the more things you can get out on the table beforehand and sort out before the job actually starts on site, the easier it's going to be to manage that project. And genuinely, you will get to a point where you only need to go and see the builder on site once a week. And you won't have the builder ringing you every 5 minutes with questions because there's no questions, because the answer to any question is, well, it's in the schedule of work that I wrote at the beginning, or it's on the drawing that the architect did for me. Or don't you remember, we talked about that at the meeting we had in Costa Coffee on that Tuesday afternoon. And so builders will get to a point where they'll realise that actually there's no questions. And so all you're doing when you're popping down is just engaging, checking that they're happy, checking that there's no real misunderstanding, checking that they're on time and on budget. And genuinely, a lot of projects, you can be in and out in 30 minutes. And by the way, builders don't want you hanging about on their projects because all the time you're chatting to them, they're probably not doing any work. And therefore, they're not actually earning themselves any money. Mm. You know, if they are busy working, sawing up timber, hanging doors and things like that, they're earning money. If they're sitting having a cup of tea, chatting to you, dealing with your, again, uncertainty, lack of clarity, then they're not earning any money from that. And so when you go to site, one of the biggest questions you need to be asking them is, are they waiting for any information from you or any product from you? And if they say, well, we're going to need the kitchen, perhaps you're ordering the kitchen, I need the kitchen for Monday week, you should be spending some time getting that kitchen there on Wednesday. Never ever get the kitchen there for Monday week, because if you get it there on Monday week, it'll be on the truck on Monday morning, but you won't ever be the first delivery. And if the carpenter's on site at 9 o'clock and there's no kitchen, he's thinking, well, I'm not going to earn any money today. And so they'll go to another site. And then your kitchen turns up at 11 o'clock. Meanwhile, they started someone else's kitchen. So the question is always, what are you waiting for? What do you need me to work on? Yeah, and don't put off choosing things like paint colours until the day is wanting to paint the wall. Yeah, be thinking about paint colours nice and early. And if you're only going to site once a week, think how much time you've now got to close up these little gaps. And importantly, think how much time you've got to go and find another deal or run another business or earn money in another way. So this is all about getting everything right up front, and then you genuinely don't need to go that often at all.
Wow, that's really powerful. And talking about that meeting, it is just so natural, isn't it, that you've done all that due diligence, you've got all the quotes, you've given them your schedule of works, and it's just like literally you just want it done, don't you? Yeah, get in there quick. Yeah. I need it all done. And as you said earlier, it is this taking that little bit extra up front. I think there's the 5 P's, isn't there? Prior preparation or whatever it is. And this is just part of that, isn't it? To just take that breath and say, let's have a meeting. and yeah, I think, well, that was, yeah, I'm not done that before, I have to say, not in that way. You know, you've met, exactly as you said, you've met them on site, you've done all of those things, but to actually have a meeting and really go back over, it's a form of re-clarifying, isn't it? It's a form of going through those schedule of works to make sure that there is no, you know, misunderstanding, looking through the drawings, all of these things. And also from our perspective, especially if you're new, you know, he can then say to you, you know, him or she, you know, the builder, this is, as you said, this is when you need the kitchen. So therefore you can put in your diary, well, actually, I need the kitchen there, you know, at least 3 days before or whatever it is, to ensure that we can get that in place. So yeah, amazing. So I'm just really aware we're coming to sort of the end of the time here. So if anyone's got any questions, please do ask. I know Martin's got plenty more that we can talk about. We could have a 2-hour session, couldn't we, Martin? I know you've got lots more to talk about, but I'd love you just to tell us a little bit more, Martin. I know I absolutely started, I'm really fortunate you are sort of relatively local to me, so my very first PIN meeting, you ran it, and you talked about having your book, which is absolutely fantastic. Have I got, oh God, I haven't got it there in front of me again, but it's a really fantastic book, and I remember buying it and being completely blown away with how, you know, you can lay things out. And I know now you do training courses, and in fact, yeah, my husband and I wanted to come to your one on Sunday, so please tell us a bit more how we can find out more about you, and yeah, do tell us about your course on Sunday. That would be great.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, I'm here to help property investors understand the process of managing refurbishments, really, because sadly, there's a huge number of them that are getting themselves into a lot of trouble. Some bail themselves out, but it costs money invariably. The worst ones take bad methodology on small projects and replicate that on big projects, and that suddenly costs a lot of money. And so I'm really just here to share the principles of how the professional side of development and construction operates, and share that within a property investing environment. Emma mentioned my book, the Refurbishment Handbook. If you just Google refurbishment mastery, it will take you to our homepage. You'll find a button on there where you can order the book, and we'll send you a hard copy. We'll also send you a PDF copy of it as well at the same time, because Royal Mail are messing us about at the moment, and it's taking 2 weeks to get the books to people. So we're sending PDF versions as well, so you'd be able to start reading that this afternoon if you wanted to. And then, as Emma said, I run courses, I do some training courses. I've got a training course this coming Sunday. I run my courses over Zoom, so you don't have to leave home. You can have lunch with the family, no travelling, and as soon as the course finishes, you're back in the garden 2 minutes later or so. So I'm running it this Sunday. It's called Successfully Working with Builders. Some of what I've spoken about this morning is within that. Of course, there's lots more content as well. It works out at about 4.5 hours of content or so. It runs from 9:30 through till 3 o'clock. So there's a morning tea break and a lunch break. You can have them with your family. It's all online. So what we'll do is I'll give Emma the link to the booking page for that. That retails at £97. So £97 to get all of that knowledge, 4.5 hours of content. Is the retail price, but because you're on today's Clubhouse and you're in Emma's group, I've said that I'll send her a link to give you a £30 discount into that training course. So I have shared. I have shared the link, and it ends with SWWB. That's it.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I put the link in the top. I've also just chucked it in the group chat, please. And sorry, remind me again, what was your book called? The Refurbishment?
And the book is called the Refurbishment Handbook.
Oh, Handbook, that was it. So that's...
and as I say, my website is Refurbishment Mastery. You won't find the training course off the website. It doesn't quite link across at the moment, but you'll find the training course there. I've got a feeling that discount code is actually on the landing page as well. It's discount 30 is the promo code you need. That'll take £30 off it. The last time I ran this course, we had 36 people online. Of those that replied to my question, all but one gave us a score of 10 out of 10, and the one who gave us a 9 out of 10 said that he hates giving anyone 10 out of 10 just in case there's something better. So he might find something better, but scores of 10 out of 10. And the question we ask actually is, would they recommend the training course to another property investor between 1 and 10? And all but one, as I say, gave me 10 out of 10. So we get some really good feedback. And I think the thing with it is there's an awful lot. I've covered a lot this morning, but there's so many little things that will just elevate you away from the pack and just lift you up to be better and more knowledgeable than other property investors.
Absolutely. I'm just typing away. Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I really love, Martin, is a lot of these things is like when we first come into property, or even along the way, you don't know what you don't know. And I'm still flabbergasted. and I'm not even purporting, I'm clearly not purporting to be like the complete knowledge, but there's so much that we don't know. And you can't Google it, because when you don't know that you don't know it, you're in that kind of trouble. So it's being able to sort of attend your type of courses. And then and what I love about this is then when people come to me and kind of like, oh, I've had a terrible tradesman and I've had this terrible experience, it's so easy, one day, under 100 quid to get all of these things is so beneficial. And it can really absolutely make the difference between you doing 1, 10, 50 refurb projects or big projects, compared to just literally doing one and then giving up. And that's a real shame, because obviously in our country we're very short of housing stock, all of these kind of things. So everything that I think you're doing, Martin, to me is just a really valuable contribution to our community and to people. So I really, really appreciate that. So some people have asked, so Anthony has asked, Martin, do you offer a more expensive mentorship? Well, we love that. If you don't, then clearly you've got to. No, sorry.
Of course I do.
Yeah, of course.
Best thing to do, if you go to the website, refurbishmentmastery.com, there's another button at the top next to the one that says buy the book that says schedule a call. And just go take the option for a free 20-minute call, and we can have a chat, Anthony, and I'll explain more about that. But yeah, absolutely. I can do I've got group mentoring and one-to-one mentoring is the answer to the question.
Yeah, and that's what I always mention about you, Martin, is I understand that you have this kind of ongoing thing where people, if you've got a project, you can come in and have support from Martin kind of during that project. Because like all of these things, isn't it? You can do a course, and then suddenly in the cold light of day, when you open up the front door and you walk in and something's happened, it's at that stage that you want to ask those questions, isn't it? So I think, what you do with that is incredibly valuable as well. So fantastic. Well, look, guys, thank you so much, Martin. I really, really appreciate you coming here and really sharing such a wealth of knowledge. I've got a big, very scribbled on piece of paper here with lots of things. I'm always loving all these interviews, guys, by the way. I do them purely selfishly, so that I can learn more as well and really gain from them. But please do, everyone, go and have a look at Martin's website. Do get his book. Let's support all our other fellow property investors who are doing so much for our community to help us move along and get forward. So thanks a lot, Martin. Any closing comments?
No, main thing to say is I'm here to help. I can help when things go wrong, but I think, as Emma's already said, a little bit of knowledge will just stop things going wrong. And sadly, I've got some horror stories that I haven't shared today of people who just didn't know they were going wrong because they thought it was easy. And some of this stuff isn't, unfortunately. So keep in touch, whether it's this training course, whether it's just from today. I'm there to help. Keep in touch, and love to see you around. And you can find me on Facebook, of course, so you're welcome to connect up with me on Facebook.
Oh, very good. Yeah, I forgot that. Yeah, so do go and find Martin. He's on all the social media. Should we find you under Refurbishment Mastery or your name?
You'll find Refurbishment Mastery with Martin Rapley as a page, and then you'll find me with my own profile as well.
Fantastic. Awesome. Oh, well, look, thanks again. So I'm going to end the other room, but if you just stay still, Martin, I'll come back to you in a moment. Thank you so much, guys. Take care, and we shall be back next week. I am sort of slightly juggling next week, so it's either going to be on time or maybe slightly later, but I will let you all know. But thanks again for your support, and see you all very soon.